record the meeting and call to order the traffic safety work group for Thursday, October 15th at 10:30 a.m. We're meeting via remote participation via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order regarding the open meeting law, and the meeting will be conducted in accordance with that order. As such, all votes will be taken by roll call. The first order of business on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment for items which are not on the agenda? Hold on, I have one more person to let in from the waiting room. Just give me 1 second. So again, I'll ask if there's anybody, you could either speak up or use the hand raise feature in Zoom if you'd like to make a public comment for any items which are not otherwise on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to official business. And the first is to revisit the request for no parking signage along Starbuck Road. And I will go to that part of the packet and share my screen. Just give me 1 second. We had a request from Ms. Jen Holloway back in the end of July, which we've previously discussed. And then I believe that the follow-up was that the fire department went and had a look out there to see how they felt. They thought that and please, Mr. Murphy, feel free to speak up, but we have an email in the packet from Mr. Bates that cutting back of the growth might help, but that no reason to restrict the parking. And I'll just share that screen. And these were this is the area in question along Starbuck Road. And then the email that we had back from fire department after their review. And I believe we also had a follow-up that we're on to the next piece. So I guess the question is there any discussion from the work group in terms of support for no parking signage along this stretch of Starbuck Road? Any discussion? Not hearing any. Is there anyone from the public? Mr. Rowland?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, and I don't know if this makes sense or not, but if you put no parking or restricted parking to the owner's side of the road, then cars at least wouldn't be parking opposite their driveway. And that might make it more maneuverable for them to get in and out, like when they have trailers and things like that.
So you're saying it would go on the opposite side?
No, well, restrict parking so that the cars are parked on the driveway side.
Right. So no parking on the south side, and then people would be allowed to park on the north side. Would be your
Yep, correct. Yep. Now that may be counter to what they really are looking for, but it might help them get in and out of their driveway.
Okay. Anybody else either support that or have any other feelings or action related to this, whether this is necessary?
Hey, this is Steve Arsenault.
Yes, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Did I step on somebody?
Go ahead, Steve, and then we'll go to Mr. Gardner.
Okay. From our perspective, we can brush cut along the road, widen it up some so that there's a better capacity for parking further away from the actual road. That was discussed on our end, and we have no problem doing that.
Okay. Mr. Gardner?
Yeah, that would be all right if they want to widen that road a little, take care of it. A lot of people go to the beach out there, and it is a favorite parking place for them.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Hearing none. Is there any action that any member would like to make as a motion, or by consent, do we agree to allow the DPW to make some brush cutting improvements in the area?
That's what I would go for. I'd make a motion that the DPW cut that back and widen it out a little.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. Excuse me, motion's been made. Is there a second? Could whoever made the second just could you please? I'm not sure who that was.
It was me, Chief Pittman.
Thank you, Chief. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a. Go ahead, Mr.
Just a
Murphy.
question as I'm thinking about this here, we're not cutting into any dune grass or anything else we'd have to worry about here. What is I mean, I'm trying to look at the pictures and the vegetation to see. I just have I don't want to get into something that we're widening a road and where we're cutting into something we could get.
I think is the understanding, Mr. Arsenault, that this would essentially be no more cutting than probably would be considered typical road maintenance, shoulders of the road.
Yes, we'll be cutting into the shoulder. We'll make sure that we establish, difference between private and public, but it'll be typical brush cutting. We're not going to try to tear down any trees or to impose on anyone's private property.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Arsenault, Mr. Gardner,
Aye.
Mr. Pittman,
Aye.
Mr. Rowland.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen, and then I can scroll back to we're going to again review a request for no parking along Macy Lane in Matticat. And so
I'm sorry.
I will, I see that we have Mr. Stephen Atlas here with us, and we have some information in our packet, which I will share in the screen.
Thank you.
I'll do a brief presentation and then turn it over to you, Mr. Atlas.
Thank you.
So I'm sharing on the screen now is the letter that we received specific to Chicago and Macy Road, and that and the photos that have been included with respect to parking in the area. Why don't I leave that up, and Mr. Atlas, if you'd like him to make a presentation to the work group,
Sure.
we'll
Thank you.
entertain that and then have deliberation.
Thank you very much. Macy Lane, this is where it hits the public beach in Matticat. And I was requesting no parking only on one side, because I know the problem is the beach gets overloaded. There's only about 20 or 30 spaces in the lot, and they come on both sides. The problem is they cover my garage, often my driveway, and there's no ability often to get a fire truck or an ambulance in through that way. We had to have someone actually go back on the road, come back in through Starbuck and come down. So they're just sort of parking everywhere. On the right is also some of our utilities, including a electric, I don't know whether you call it a transformer or a conduit, but that gets run over several times a year also. So with Millie's now parking on that street, also that street has become just very, very crowded, unusual, and I think sort of dangerous. And I was only asking for one side. I'd prefer, it would be great if nobody parked, but I understand they need to.
Okay. And I will share, let's see. can you now see the aerial of the area, everybody?
And the funny thing is, our well is serviced by somebody who drives a fire truck, and he couldn't get down one day.
Okay. And so would your request be for either particular side of the road, as somebody very familiar with the
Yeah,
area?
the side of the houses to the right. Yes,
So
that's where.
along
Otherwise, you've got all of the other houses are on Mattocket Road. The houses on the right are on Macy Road. So the ones on the left have there's nothing to block.
So just so that we're clear for discussion purposes of the proposal, something like that for a no parking is
Yes,
what
sir.
is your request?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Work group members, anybody have any comments, thoughts on the proposal to enact a no parking zone along the south side of Macy's Lane in front of number 6 Chicago and 8 Macy Road?
I don't have any problem with it. I go down that road every once in a while. I go to that parking lot at the end. And sometimes it's hard to get through there with just a car, never mind an ambulance or a fire truck. And by just having parking on one side, I think will help a lot.
Mr. Chair.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
We're kind of piecemealing this no parking, and I'm afraid, just my thought that if we no parking this section, next month we'll be back and we'll be doing the rest of the road. I would entertain making no parking across that entire south side of that road.
I agree with that.
I'm thrilled. Thank you.
So would that be your motion, Mr. Murphy, to make the south side of, Macy Road, no parking, posted as no parking? And
I'll
is there,
second that.
so the motion has been made by Mr. Murphy and seconded by Mr. Gardner. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Murphy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Arsenault?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Roll? Mr. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Pittman?
No.
So that motion carries 4-2. Thank you, Mr. Atlas.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda. We have review proposed moped motorcycle parking areas on Main Street, India Street, Cambridge Street, and Center Street. And I had also included one for consideration on East Chestnut Street. And I'll bring that up here. I'll go back to sharing the screen. So this was prepared by the DPW. Mr. Arsenault, would you like to present this material?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll give it up to Ray. He'll be better at it.
Mr. Sylvia? You're muted. There we go.
Yeah, the only, we did up these drawings. This is what we've discussed before. The signs are already prepared and ready to go out if it's approved. These are the measurements. I went down and actually took the measurements and tried to figure out best spacing and what the legal spacing is. this is basically what we had discussed prior. The only difference was when the one that you added, Art, we'd like to just make sure that the sign, if this is approved, that the sign also says motorcycles. There'd be moped and motorcycle to be uniform with all of the spaces.
Okay, so let's just run through these. Thank you for that. And so the first one we have is Cambridge Street. The next one is on Main Street. The next one is on Lower India Street. And so those are the four. And then looks like we had one more here. Is this Center Street?
Yeah, center at Chestnut.
Oh, there's the label. Gotcha. I've been just trying to identify them from memory. Great. So does anybody have any discussion, wish to discuss any of these specific locations or the proposal in general?
Can I butt in a little bit?
Please.
Art, is that okay?
Yes,
I
please.
just want to thank you all for allowing me to be part of this group. I don't say much, and I appreciate everything you've done for this issue. It got extremely more noticeable this summer because of the amount of spaces that we have given up for COVID, for dining, and also, you know, considering it, if some of it happens next year, this is a great opportunity to implement this, at least to try in some spots. I'm sure that there are plenty of other ones that would work here, you know, without affecting vehicles turning, without affecting, I see what you've done. They've made it so that where they go, that won't really affect a vehicle turning somewhere or something like that into those yellow spaces. So yellow lines. So I think this is a good start. The only thing I would add to this is the electric mopeds. I call them electric mopeds now because they kind of are. Those new ones parked in front of the Mooney building that are like, they're exactly the same size as a moped. So I'm not sure if we should, I don't want to change the sign, but like they're going to end up in these spaces too, which I think is fine. It's serving the purpose, and it's almost like a future sort of, you know, natural migration to these other modes of transportation. I'm assuming, Art, that you're going to talk about the old where you used to get the beach sticker. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, I was going to go to that as a follow-up to this, because I'm not sure that we shouldn't take, you know, whether that should be lumped in or not. I thought we would go first.
That should be a corral of everything, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for this.
Thank you. And for the record of the minutes, that was Nat Lowell. Anybody else? Mr. Pittman.
Thanks, Art. So I'm not, in general, I'm not opposed to the concept of this, as you know, and I think, you know, we put a lot of work into this going forward, but I do know a couple things that are going on right now that may significantly alter our ability to do this. One is there's definitely a movement to allow on-street and even expand potentially on-street dining next summer, which is going to drastically impact the parking that's down there. I think we need to look at it holistically, not just this piece today and then the parking piece tomorrow. I think it's going to, you know, the select board at their retreat Tuesday and then again today are talking about this issue. And I think there's going to be an effort coming out of it to look at the parking situation downtown overall very thoroughly very soon. One of the things that we've asked for is a parking coordinator to be hired that would be instrumental in being able to look over and make recommendations that make sense based on usage, time, everything else. So I think moving forward with this at this point might be a slightly premature, although I think the concept needs to be worked into whatever the overall plan ultimately is for downtown, based on what the select board does with the on-street dining. The other thing is, as far as parking, you know, those electric bikes, they are electric bikes, they're not mopeds. One thing that differentiates between a bicycle and a moped is the requirement to be licensed. Anything that parks on the street should have a requirement to be licensed. So that's how we eliminate people just filling up these spaces with bikes and things like that, because that will happen, as Nat said. And then we'll be back right where we were before we put these down. We'll have mopeds parked in regular vehicle spaces because they can legally do that. And bicycles will fill the spaces that are designated for motorcycles and bicycles. That space next to, and I may be wrong on this, but it was my understanding at one point in time that space next to the NRTA was going to be dedicated towards those red bikes that you see. Yeah, that space there, that they were going to be setting up a distribution point there for those. I may be wrong on that. I haven't seen any down there, although I have seen them in other parts of the island, but Erica would know the answer to that, I think. So that's just my 2 cents on the issue, but I do agree with Nat. We need to have some dedicated spaces for mopeds, and I think it definitely needs to be part of the overall upcoming plan for downtown parking.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll share a couple thoughts. I had prepared this graphic prior to the DPW's work and what they've proposed, and I think that it may be a better idea to hold off on this area and go with, you know, this is already sort of being utilized for bicycles, and maybe leave this for the additional planning that may be happening. So I wouldn't be opposed. I wanted to include it because I had prepared it sort of pre-COVID for discussion, and was waiting for a good time to kind of bring it forward. And then I had included the information about the requirement for the mopeds. And then I think I put together a small, you know, thinking that we might try to put together, you know, if we're going to essentially a purpose type of a sheet, if this is going to the select board, though perhaps this gets edited, that instead of specific to 20 East Chestnut, it's almost the same, you know, purpose, in other words, to go to the select board. So I'm personally fine if we didn't include this area. If you as a group decide that you'd like to include it, I think we could, but I do see that could need some more work. In terms of the chief's input related to the other stuff happening downtown, I certainly agree that it's best if we could have it all looked at together, but I would personally support this now in an effort that it gets included, you know, by having the support of the work group for something like this. Given that we're only an advisory body, then hopefully this could get worked into the overall planning for what areas get closed. And I would hope that if they're going to be more on-street dining options and lost parking, there still is area for the mopeds so that they're not taking up what parking spots are left. So I would support personally the proposal by the DPW and not the one that I did, and open that up to any further discussion. Mr. Sylvia?
Yeah, and I understand what the chief's talking about next year too. So there are two that would be affected, would be if they do close Cambridge Street off again next year. Obviously that one would be affected. And then the other one is Main Street, because that's actually a 1 hour parking spot. The rest of them are on existing yellow lines. So I don't think those would be really affected, but Chestnut, I mean, not Chestnut, Cambridge and Main Street would be, just because it would be blocked off for dining, and then the Main Street one would be, is taking away actual parking. That's all.
Art?
Mr. Pittman?
Yeah, see, in my mind, what I think we should fight for, like, for instance, you know, that Cambridge Street's a good example. There's a huge wasted space there right now, on Cambridge Street between their first set of, you know, where they dine. I mean, there's room for probably 30 mopeds in there today, because of that wasted space. And that's the kind of thing I think we may have the ability to take advantage of if they make this permanent outdoor dining changes. That I'm not a betting man, but I would bet they're going to. And there's others too. There's that one on, there was another, the other one is on Easy Street there, that side, the other side on Cambridge Street.
So I guess the question, part of the discussion is somewhat chicken and egg. You know, do we table this for a month and wait to see what the select board comes up with for the on-street dining, and then we revisit it and try to establish, you know, and maybe even get more infill and tweak it, and then put that proposal, or put this forward so that at least as they are working on the on-street, this is out there and they've seen it and are trying to think about it.
I think we should put it forward, and with the understanding and instructions that whatever they do with the dining, we want this to be included in it.
I agree. Mr. Murphy?
That was going to be my exact point, is that we put this forward and put in the chief's recommendation that any spaces or any roadways that are blocked off for in-street dining, that the end spaces are considered for auxiliary parking of mopeds or motorcycles.
And to that point, if I may, do we want to be that specific that any of those additional spaces are only for mopeds, or is there actually the ability to perhaps have additional regular vehicle parking spaces in some of these areas as we start to reconfigure and block the roads? In other words, would it be better to have a recommendation that the portions of blocked road be considered for parking, and then it could go to the next step as to whether it's moped, motorcycle, or vehicles? Like, I look at the north end of Cambridge Street, sort of where people have been parking, and then between the Jersey barriers and Easy Street, right? Should that be parking? I think that as a plan is developed for the blocking and the road on-street dining, I think that it should also be revisited with respect to regular, you know, how can we maximize safe, right? Because maybe that's not the best spot for those cars as well, if they're backing out into Easy Street with truck traffic. I mean, I could see both pieces of that, but I think it's worth looking at.
That's exactly the problem, Art, is most of those spaces where people are parking, they're not supposed to be. There's safety issues.
Right.
And there's also access issues for trash removal. So, so we have to be careful with vehicles. If we do utilize that space for anything, I would think it would be safer to utilize it for smaller vehicles like mopeds, things that can be moved in the event of emergency. Bicycles, for instance, may be a good alternative in some of those spaces. But what they've turned into this year is kind of private parking spaces for some of the people down there, and that needs to end. And we're well aware of that, but it's just because of the situation this year, it's just been allowed. But I don't think in a new reconvened or redrawn and redeveloped plan that would be the case. So I think we just need to, put this forward. We need to stay focused on, if no matter what they do, if there's reduced parking because of on-street dining, there's going to be a higher demand for parking, and there may very well be a higher demand for smaller vehicles, for bicycles, mopeds, motorcycles, things like that, as people realize that we're not manufacturing more parking spaces, we're actually doing less. So we'll be able to accommodate them. I think we just need to be at the front of the door when they start talking about it.
Is there a motion related to this matter?
I'll make a motion. We just forward the project as proposed, with the understanding we'd like this or some version of it worked into the overall downtown plan.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Arsenault,
Aye.
Mr. Rowland,
Aye.
Mr. Gardner,
Aye.
Chief Pittman.
Aye.
Chair also votes aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you.
Could I ask, did we include Cambridge Street or what is it? The next to the police station there?
No, I don't think so. I think that wasn't your intention, was it?
I actually think we should include that.
Okay.
That way we got it, dibs on it in the event that it's not going to be used for that other option.
Does everyone agree with that clarification to the motion and the vote? Okay. So
Yes.
we'll forward the whole package as was in our packet to the select board to recommend it, and then continuing discussion as well as related to the on-street dining. I had actually suggested at a select board meeting as a citizen back in one of the first Zoom meetings that as they were considering that, the traffic safety work group could be helpful to the town if they so chose in reviewing and considering areas that get closed. So maybe it'll end up on a future agenda, or maybe it gets worked out without us. Moving on, we have a request for a speed bump crosswalk from Ms. Alicia Lynn, who I see is with us. So just to quickly go over her correspondence, we're trying to figure out how to get a crosswalk in place where the sidewalk on Rugged Road meets the walkway in front of Nantucket Lighthouse School, and perhaps a speed bump and more school zones. Ms. Lynn, would you like to address the work group, and then we'll have a deliberation on the matter?
Tell everyone. So we basically would just first off, so side where we marked in orange. Then from what that would be, as well as a crosswalk, because can be nicely down to the forest. There is a sidewalk, so to and a lot of kids ride their bike to school. We wear that sidewalk to the actual school. Some and crosswalk. Eric, the speed bump, Michael, but I it nicely.
I can't hear a thing she's
Yeah,
saying.
Ms. Lynn, I was just waiting for, I was going to tell you that you've got a pretty bad connection there. We could get maybe every fifth word of what you said, and your video appears to be frozen.
Oh dear. Okay. Let me.
That's a little better.
So, just stop me if you can't hear me. But I mean, this is pretty scary.
Yeah, you're not really coming through very well. So if you can hear us, I think we understand the proposal, and maybe we'll start to discuss it. And then if you can perhaps get a better connection, maybe jump back in that okay?
Yes, I'm gonna look further. I'm gonna try a better spot.
Okay, perfect. So, as we discussed in the past, the last time I recall, the work group discussing school zones was on Nobody Farm Road. And there was specific state law required to and procedures and signage related to the establishment of that school zone. It's not something that we can simply say it's a school zone and it is anointed as such. So I think that we have to consider that. And Mr. McNeil had forwarded me a couple of days ago some correspondence from the manual uniform traffic control devices as related to standards for school zones. So I have not reviewed these as related to this site specifically. I think there's two items that we should consider and perhaps can consider them separately. The crosswalk as one, which is something that we could handle locally and recommend. And then the matter related to actually establishing a school zone. So I'll open that up to discussion from the work group. Chief Pittman.
Yeah, I think it does qualify for school zone markings. The only problem is my list shows Rugged Road as a private road, which I didn't think the town was paying for improvements on private roads. And if there is a crosswalk that is installed, it should be one of those raised table type crosswalks that are building in front of schools now that serve as speed bumps and crosswalks. Would be my recommendation, but I think we need to resolve the issue of whether it's on private property or whether it's a private road or not.
My understanding is also that it's a private road. I mean, we could seek an opinion from town council for a definitive answer on that, but I'm 90% sure that it's a private road.
Same here. The response we had was, well, when I talked to Rob about it, he got back that it was a private road. And then the MUTCD falls into play because I think it has to abut a public road, I believe, for a school zone.
Yeah, I was trying to look it up on the manual, and you may be right, but there seems to me there was something about the fact that it intersected with a public road, but I can't find it in the manual right at the moment.
Can you guys hear me now?
Much better.
Okay, I changed offices. So if it is a private road, are we then allowed to put up our own signage in regard to that?
Well, putting up signage and putting up and having a signage that's enforceable is two different things. I really need to find this about school zones because you have to put up signage that's consistent with what's recommended by the manual uniform traffic control. And we have to see what that says here. I don't understand why I can't find this. It's only 1,000 pages long.
And if it does have to abut a public road, isn't Fairgrounds a public road?
The question is whether the school zone has to be on the public portion of the road.
Okay.
Okay, come on.
Yeah, I just know about that excerpt. We need, at least on my end, I need more time to research it to be more definitive, but that did raise some concern.
I think we've talked about this before on there.
I have put up what was there, and right, we may just have to look at it a little bit closer.
And that's fine. If it is a private road, I guess my question would just be, does that mean that this isn't possible at all, or?
I think that's what we're trying to determine, and I do believe it to be a private road. So
It is.
the question is, in that case, if it couldn't, whether or not a school zone can be enacted, an enforceable school zone can be enacted on a private road. And that may even be something that we may ask the administration whether they'd be willing to, if we don't find it definitively, perhaps council could help with something like that.
Yeah,
And
it just seems, even if it is private, it just seems, I don't know, silly to not be able to have some type of signage, just, for the safety of the kids.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know why you can't put the signs up. I mean, it's not like somebody's gonna tear them down. The question
Well,
is-
that's the thing. It's, I don't think we're looking to enforce, but I think we just want people
Right.
who are driving. There's a lot of people who have, it's a small school, no idea that it's a school. We want people to be aware and to be on the look and to, slow down. There's that whole housing development behind here. And, people drive by pretty fast, and it's just concerning.
there's all kinds of criteria about it having to be reflective. It has to be, it just says conventional roads. It doesn't differentiate in the manual.
I did find in section 7E-2, the school property abuts the public right of way within the limits of the proposed zone area in terms of the warrants for the school zone. I think that might have been what.
So say that again.
So essentially it reads that the property abuts a public right of way within the limits of what would be the zone area. And the question is, if there was support for enacting this, it also gets back to the original question of, is this something that the town does or that would be done by the school if it's private? Because typically the town doesn't make improvements to private roads.
See, when it comes to, it says there, go to that language, Art, would you again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, following minimum warrants, the school property abuts the public right of way within the limits of the proposed zone area. So, that is a way in which the public has right of access. It's just not publicly maintained. It's maintained by the abutters, as I understand it. So I think there's nothing to stop that. And as far as enforcement goes, the town can do enforcement of certain things on ways. It's a matter of policy, because if we did that, everybody would be establishing their own speed limits and everything else, and it would be a challenge. But I think if they stayed within the guidelines of the manual, as far as the distances, the signage, the markings, I don't know that they'd be prohibited from doing that on their roadway. The question would be whether the town, as a matter of policy, would fund it and do it. But I see no reason why, looking here, why the school can't do this, or the residents of the roadway couldn't do this, these improvements. And like I said, my advice would be, if you're going to do a crosswalk, to do a combination crosswalk, speed bump, a cable crosswalk like they're putting in front of schools all over the place now, that slows traffic down and doesn't create.
So we could put up signage and just not touch the speed limit and put in our own.
You could put a school speed limit sign.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, you probably won't see us out there enforcing it much, but you certainly could put it up.
Okay. And with the raised bed crosswalk, could we put, like you've seen something in the middle of that? Like,
You mean a device of some kind?
yes, or just a raised bed crosswalk,
Yeah, just a raised bed crosswalk, maybe with some, you know,
reflectors?
reflector paint markings, something like that. But I wouldn't put any kind of a device in it because that's just something for somebody to hit.
Okay.
Unless it's a temporary device, like you put in, like, you know how the public school has that little sign they put out there about crosswalks. They put it out in the middle of the road during the school day.
Yeah.
They remove it at the end of or they're supposed to anyway, at the end of the school day. You know, you can certainly do that, but you know, that's a portable and it's temporary thing.
Okay.
But I think the limits of your school zone would be basically after you cross your property abuts fairgrounds, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the limits would be as you basically from that crosswalk up on Fairgrounds Road there to the other end of your property, right there. Yeah, would be where I would place the school signs, and then you could place a school zone sign ahead further down the road, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay. So it seems like there's general support for essentially deferring this to the property owner to handle on a private road.
That's what I would do.
And Ms. Lynn, I will send forward you the manual on uniform traffic control device relative section, which has information on specifications for the signage.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, yeah, because I'm the more I read into it, I see it seems to be exclusionary. Like signage can only be put up on school property abutting public roads. So yeah, it's just whatever to protect the kids, but I don't know if that's going to be kosher.
Steve, the issue really is only about who's funding it, because any way in Nantucket here, the public has right of access, which makes it a public way. It's just not owned and maintained by the public body.
I got you. So it's a private road with public use.
Yeah, the school couldn't shut that road off. The town would be in there and force them to open it because it would deny access to people further down. So they have the public has the right of access, so it makes it a public way. It's just not publicly owned and maintained.
And
No,
is all of Rugged Road a private road?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't think there's any specific action required by the work group on this matter, and I just sent you the information that the DPW director had provided to me, and hopefully that's
perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to hop off the call.
Take care. Bye bye. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, we have a review to relocate a crosswalk on Hummock Pond Road at Millbrook Road. And we had a request from Ms. Shannon Bell on this matter, and asking if it could be moved to the other side of Millbrook, abutting 123. It would be much safer to cross. And here in the photo, this is Millbrook Road right here, Hummock Pond Road. You can see the faded existing, and her suggestion is that this crosswalk should instead be in this location. With that, I'll open it up to any discussion or comments? Mr. Rowland? You're muted. You're muted.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I live off of Millbrook Road, and I use that for biking and crossing the road there quite often. And I think it's a really good suggestion to move it, as she's suggesting. It will require some work to open up. I think there's a split rail fence there and probably a little paving to connect the bike path to the roadway. But I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Anyone else?
As far as DPW, we've had a discussion on it. We do see that it could potentially be safer to cross there, so we're open to that change. And but yes, we need to detail out how we do that to completion, not just removing the markings, but connecting everything. So yeah, we're open to that change.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, so there's been if I may, Mr. Rowland, your motion would be to support the request to relocate the crosswalk from the east to the west side of Millbrook Road.
Correct.
And that's been seconded by Chief Pittman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Arsenault?
Aye.
Mr. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner? Mr. Gardner, sorry, you're muted. You can raise your hand if you want, Jack. Do you vote aye? Thank you. Not sure how you have to unmute. Maybe try pressing your space bar. Mr. Pittman?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Moving on to the next item. We have a general discussion of sidewalk and multi-use path improvement projects. And I asked for this to be included. There isn't anything in the packet. I wanted to bring the work group up to speed on a conference call, Zoom meeting that I had with Alan Reinhardt, the chair of the Road and Right-of-Way Committee, Lee Saperstein, I believe is the secretary of the Road and Right-of-Way Committee, and Andrew Vorse. And the discussion was really centering around projects that are in the queue and pending related to sidewalk and really infrastructure improvement projects in the area. And they are working on, Mr. Reinhardt is working on a memorandum that would go to the select board ultimately to prioritize the projects that would be included. And I'm just trying to find in my email to share with you the projects that are under discussion. Sorry, the problem is some of it's been going to my personal email and some of it's to my work email. So I'm bouncing between here. But the Prospect Street sidewalk is one of them. And the connection that we've discussed for quite a few years, and whether it's going to go over, going up by the new development related to Mill Hill. And then there also was quite a bit of discussion about, we had reviewed at our last meeting the concept of making and the plans for partially making Pleasant Street one way. And in fact, there were more well-developed plans for sort of the overall area that would maintain the two-way traffic and make some improvements in sidewalks. So the DPW has a lot of that in the works. I'm sorry, I can't find right now the document that Alan was working on. I will share that with the work group and have it on the agenda for the next meeting. But I did want to just bring to your attention sort of that, you know, the discussions had happened and there is an effort to try to move things along. And I'd be open to any other discussion or input anybody may have on that. Sorry, I don't have the additional information. Anyone? All right, we'll take that as a to be continued at the next meeting. And then finally, we have minutes for September 17th, which were included in your packet.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, right, we had one more item on our amended agenda, thank you. And that was related to, this is the amended agenda, thank you. Discussion of the speed limit on South Shore Road. And based on our minutes from the previous meeting, what do we have here? So, we'll place it on the next, we were going to put it on the next meeting. And the question is, I think, does this area, this stretch of roadway qualify for some reduced or changed speed limits based on density? And I can bring that up here. South Shore. Here we go. So my understanding from the last meeting, if I recall, is that the road is currently posted 30. And I guess the question is, would it qualify for the 25-mile-an-hour posting? And it does appear that it's fairly dense with more development going along in there. I guess the question is, do we need a specific study to make that determination, or would there be support from this work group to modify that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't, I think that this is a roadway that when the Board of Selectmen adopted the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit island-wide, there were certain streets that were identified. I think they called them feeder roads. It was Burns had come up with it. Fairgrounds Road, South Shore Road, Hummock Pond Road. There's a bunch of roads that, not a bunch, that were determined based on their design, their use, everything else should stay whatever they were posted. This road's posted as 30 mile per hour, which is the statutory limit for a residential area that's not thickly settled. There would have to be a determination to make it that it was thickly settled in order to make it 25 mile per hour. Now, the impact of that is, I don't believe it's going to slow one car down. I think it'll just make violators out of a bunch of people who currently go 30 mile an hour, because the road has a naturally inherent speed built into it as well. It's long, it's straight, there's few obstructions, or things like intersections, things like that. There's a bike path. The bike path set well off the pavement. It's, there's a good barrier there of grass between the bike path and the roadway. So it's inherently, it's not natural to go 25 mile per hour on that road. And what we've experienced on a couple of these other roads that we've converted to 25 mile per hour, because, people looked at it and said it's densely, it's thickly settled, is it's a significant increase in the number of complaints about speeding, to the point where, quite honestly, I would have to hire 40 more cops to enforce all of the complaints we get on speeding on the roads on Nantucket. And I don't see the select board doing that. I think they need to make a determination as to whether they want, how they want this to be, obviously. But, you know, I think what's going to change the dynamic on this roadway somewhat is going to be that new project they're building. If that empties out onto this road, that's going to change the inherent speed limit on it a little bit on the first part of it, but the second part of it down further, it's not. I think the biggest problem on this road, because I do live off of this road, is some of the commercial trucks going down to the wastewater treatment plant. RB Hour is a big violator. We've talked to them. We've threatened them. We've even written tickets to them. Sometimes what you have is a big dump truck that's pulling the trailer that's going 30 mile an hour, that because of the size and mass of the vehicle looks like it's going 50. You know, it's not verified with the speed trailers that we've put out there. So I'm reluctant, and I wouldn't support changing the speed limit at this point on this road until some other things occur further down the line.
I agree with Bill on that. Everything he said, the visibility is really good. I also live off of that road. There is some development happening, but everyone's pretty much removed from the road itself, and there's a nice wide pedestrian bike path there. Very few crossings. So, and at the crosswalk, at South Pasture and at the intersection, visibility is very good. So I think it's fine the way it is right now.
Okay. Anybody else have anything further?
Can you hear me, Art? This is Mickey Perry.
Hi, Mickey. Yes, I can.
Okay. I understand exactly what the chief is saying, and I guess my concern is what can we do, as he pointed out, the commercial trucks going down to the DPW are huge offenders of speeding. I am very aware of how fast these larger vehicles are going. And what can we do? Because it's not safe. There's no way a truck full of dirt is going to be able to stop if a child runs out. And, you know, there is a big bike path there. I understand that, but there is just no way they're going to be able to stop. And it's, you know, they do get up speed, and something needs to happen. I don't know, you know, before a child or an elderly person crossing off of one of the land bank trails comes out. I've been in front of this commission or the select board about this road several times when I had horses and we were trying to use the road. I mean, Jack, you probably remember when this road was dirt and we went to Augie's and we got horse feed and, you know, all these other things. It has changed greatly, and I appreciate that. But what can we do to get people to understand that this is not a racetrack?
I don't have any further advice than to call the police.
Well, I think that's fine. But as Chief Pittman has pointed out, enforcement is an issue. I don't know how we can do that unless, you know, that's going to change it. I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I just add a couple things?
Sure, Mr. Lowell.
Thank you so much for having me back. I was muted before, I didn't realize it. So to kind of add to what Chief and Steve and Ms. Perry said, the 30-mile-an-hour sign that's currently there is kind of blocked by trees. You really kind of can't even see it until you kind of know where it is. I agree with everything that everyone said. I've lived here since 1987 when it was dirt and there was no cable TV either. The problem is that the first part of the road to Blueberry is really where the problem is, in at least at what we're talking about now. Okay. I understand the thickly settled controversy. It's kind of weird how that sort of happened we have a thickly settled sign on Boulevard We have one after the red gate turn on Mattocket Road, but new lane is 30 miles an hour and it's in ROH and R1 zoning. So it's kind of a, I think that's, as the chief said, it's sort of a, you know, it's sort of a moving target. My suggestion would be maybe to add a couple more 30-mile-an-hour signs and maybe some other signage, but make them visible for now, and maybe consider thickly settled to Blueberry. I don't know if that's legal. I don't know if that's something that we can do. You know, as far as, you know, this board, this body make that recommendation. I'm not sure if it's even legal. I'm just making a simple suggestion that is kind of like the area that is in need of something. You know, so that would be my only comment. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hey,
Mr.
Art.
Rowland?
Yeah, I'm just throwing this out. I mean, what if you were to put a stop sign at Blueberry Lane? It's pretty far down and that would slow traffic down. That's probably a pretty well used road itself.
Mm.
I don't think the volume of traffic would justify
No.
it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
You know, the big issue here is really it's that trail coming out on the land bank land. It's kind of hidden. People try to cross right there, and theoretically, the land bank should have improved the sidewalk up to the real crosswalk from there. That I think is where the biggest risk and challenge is coming across there. I see people walking their dogs out there all the time and then walking down alongside the road on the dirt side rather than on the improved side. They should maybe improve that all the way up to the intersection where by Sherburne there.
Anybody else? Any support or agreement for recommendation for more signage and or in response to Mr. Lowell's suggestions, you know, whether the initial part of the road be 25 and thickly settled and then transition to a 30, just for discussion. I'm not sure the density here meets that.
I'm sorry, y'all. I don't like to go against the grain too much, but I disagree. I don't see the need for stop signs or anything like that. It's not densely settled. It's very few people along the sides of the roads between Blueberry and the intersection. There's plenty of space to me. The biggest danger to me are the deer, and like the commercial vehicles. They get to about Sherburne Commons and they kick it up a notch right there and start speeding. There's a problem, but it's just so open and there's so much visibility. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
Mr. Murphy?
Is it possible maybe we refer this to DPW to see if the idea of putting more signages in could take place? Not so much a motion to have them put more in, but maybe they can look at the roadway and establish whether additional signing would help.
Mr. Sylvia, could I ask you if you have any sense for the volume or the amount of signs that may exist on this road, and maybe some, if to put you on the spot, but just a quick, you know, before we just, what you might think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually live at the end of the road also, so I'll look at the visibility of that 30 mile an hour sign. I'm not sure. I thought it was visible enough, but if it's not, then I can actually squeak it out, make it more visible. That I don't know if, I don't know, it's hard to say, but most of the roads that I've posted a lot of signs on doesn't seem to do much good anyway. We post more, they just seem to read less. If we have it posted at the beginning, maybe in the middle and then at the end on this long of a road, then it might help a little, but I just, they're gonna go 30, they're gonna go 35. I see it all day there. But I'll just make sure, I mean, I can definitely make sure that the the signs are more visible. If it's, I don't notice it, so I'll have to go down and check.
I think that's helpful. Thank you. So it sounds like by consensus, we'll refer this to DPW to review the signage along the road.
Mr. Chairman, if I could also ask that they review the no parking signage down along there. We actually been dealing with a complaint south of Blueberry where contractors are parking between the bike path and the road again. And the officers went up there to deal with it, but it's unclear with the signage as to what's no parking and what is allowed. Is my understanding, the entire stretch was supposed to be no parking, but the signage isn't exactly clear on that, or there's not enough signage to make it clear.
There's actually, I think, 4 signs right before, or 3 signs right before Blueberry.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're before Blueberry.
And that
so
was because we,
stretch.
that's where we had the issue last year? I think we put them out there, and that's where we had the issue where there were people parking there.
Yep.
It was obscuring visibility coming out of Blueberry. So I mean, the only thing we can do is put more down there. We're gonna wind up with signs all up and down the road. I always thought if we have them at the beginning that says no parking either side, that means no parking inside the whole road. But it's hard. I understand it's hard when you get to intersections and stuff.
Yeah, really, when you get to an intersection, it becomes a new roadway in a sense.
Right.
And then down here, there's a no parking sign way down by the plant, I believe, on the right-hand side of the road if you're heading out.
Yeah.
Or heading in, I mean, but nobody goes down there and turns around, comes back and sees that. So I don't know. It's difficult without putting up 100 signs. But like I said, the guys go out there and it's not exactly clear to them, then it's not clear. And they don't write tickets.
Yeah, I mean, I can put one on the other side. I usually try to double side them so that it covers both sides of the roads. And it's, I mean, obviously it says either side anyway, but it can be visible from both sides. That way we don't have them literally, every no parking sign is going to have one on the other side of the street. I like doing them double sided. I don't know if that's an issue or not, but I mean, at least it's visible from both directions.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Okay. Is that amenable to all? Okay, hearing no objection. Thank you, Ray. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the approval or acceptance, I should say, of minutes from the, what does this say? Oh, September 17th meeting. Is there any corrections, comments, or concerns with the minutes? Hearing none, those are adopted. And then is there any other business that committee members would like to mention, Mr. Pittman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to show the committee some of the things we've done with parking enforcement improvements here and some of the data we're able to gather going forward. This summer, as you know, was the first summer in the parking management program that we started at the direction of the select board as one of their transportation goals. Ultimately, their goal is to implement a paid parking program in the downtown area. But we started this year by using handheld parking enforcement devices, where we were actually chalking vehicles and then issuing tickets via these devices if they were warranted. And it gave us a really good idea as to what we're dealing with, although I have to say the data is significantly skewed because of the pandemic. We didn't have as many vehicles downtown parking, and we had only half the number of enforcement people we normally have, that kind of thing. So But just so you have an idea, I'd like to share my screen
Sure.
here. I
Go
can
right
do it.
ahead, unless I have to somehow allow it.
I don't think so. Okay,
Yep, you're good.
you can see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is now we can pull up. This was yesterday. This is an area. What these red dots are, or question marks, whatever they are timestamps where an officer is patrolling an area with the handheld device. It gives us a timestamp every so often. I don't know what the frequency is, but it tells us when somebody says, I haven't seen an officer on my road all day long. Well, we can show that that's not accurate. Now the lines connect these dots, but obviously you see how they're going across, like from here to here. Well, the officer didn't obviously travel that way because the dots are connected. They went up a road and down a road. So I can safely assume that the person was walking down Broad Street when this line was generated and this line was generated. So we can get a good idea as to where they were. Now, other things on there, wherever you see one of these little stops or parking meters, that means a citation was issued. We can look and see what the ticket number was, who wrote it, what time they wrote it, etc., where they wrote, what the location of it was, that kind of thing. I can do it just looking at the tickets that were wrote in a day. Like I said, this is one officer in one day, yesterday. Now, you want to see what that officer did? Well, they wrote 39, or they wrote 40 tickets. And those tickets, you guys see that one? Those tickets generated $975 in fines, of which 2% were paid. 2% of them were voided. I got a feeling when it's voided, it's shown as paid. I don't know the answer to that yet. But those 39 tickets were for overtime parking. They wrote one ticket for violation of the loading zone. That was that one officer yesterday. Today, or if you compare that to a typical day in the summer, here was July 15th this summer. We had 3 handicap parking violations. It shows, again, I think when it's showing a void, it's showing up as paid. I don't know, I'll have to get the answer, but it's at least one of those was paid and one of them still outstanding. It showed an obstructing a crosswalk and sidewalk. They wrote 3 of those. They wrote 12 restricted or prohibited areas, 69 overtime parking violations, 2 tickets for parking 1 foot over or from the curb, 1 loading zone, 2 permit pass not valid tickets, and 7 parking upon a yellow line tickets. So it gives us a lot of information. Like I said, that's one officer. Another report we can generate and will give us a total count. This is year to date, well, June 1st to date, since we started using this system. We've written 1,990 tickets for total fines of $67,575. No, that's inaccurate. I forgot to change a date. It's more like 100 and something. That was just from June 1st to July 15th. But you can tell all the different types of violations that are written. And then it gives us a breakdown, what's been paid, what's due, how many were voided, etc. And we can break it down by each officer. This is what they wrote. Officer 1010, whoever that is, wrote 5 tickets for restricted or prohibited area. Some of these are regular police officers here. Everything they're writing is put into this system too, even if they're doing it on an old paper ticket. So we know exactly who's doing what now with these tickets. We can go down here's one of the CSOs who was downtown writing. They wrote 200, this particular CSO wrote 275 overtime parking tickets during that time frame. We can go down further and we can look at each road. Now, this is where it gets a little you got to use a little ingenuity, because different streets have different names, or the individual inputs them different into the system. So like here, they put in East Chestnut and they wrote 4 tickets. Another one put East Chestnut Street and wrote 1 ticket. Well, it's the same place. Dionysus Beach and versus Dionysus Beach Road, same thing. So, you know, I'm not sure how to fix that because everybody spells things or does things a little bit differently. But it gives us an idea on what street we're having most of the issues and what types of issues and stuff. So, you know, we can collect a lot of data, and I'm sure there's a ton more that I'm not even aware of. We're in the process now of getting ready to hopefully going to repost the traffic coordinator position. The select board in their discussions, one of the things that they've been talking about doing is actually creating a parking commission that may actually have the power to make a lot of the decisions about some of the things we've been talking about in traffic safety. Whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know. You know, that's up to them, but the parking coordinator will be able to look at this data. We'll be able to make decisions based on what they're seeing. Maybe there's areas that we can make changes to the parking rules or the timeline lengths or something so that they can maximize that parking. I know in Barnstable, when we went over and talked to them about their Park Happy program, their staff has the power to make daily decisions. For instance, they start noticing that downtown area has a lot of vacant spaces between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. They can make a daily decision to say, we're going to have free parking during that time to try to generate people, you know, the ability for people to come downtown and have dinner or have lunch because they now get free parking. You know, and that's what we hope eventually we'll be able to do here is we'll have the flexibility and not be tied to such rigid parking rules that which actually in some way hamper economic development and hamper the best utilization of the spaces we have. We have people in place who can actually make daily or frequent decisions that might best maximize that. But with this system in place, we'll be able to get the data we need to be able to make those decisions. So I just wanted to give this committee a heads up as to what we're doing and what we're where we're trying to move this. So anybody have any questions about it? Or?
No, that's great. Thanks. I almost wrote to you actually after I saw the presentation at the select board meeting to tell you how useful and, you know, I thought this information could be for us.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm just, you know, I've tinkered with it a little bit. Somebody that knows what they're doing with it can really use it to their advantage. And by next year, you know, we hope, providing things improve, we'll have everybody down there that's doing enforcement using these devices, and we'll have really instantaneous information as to what's going on. But one thing it's helped me as a police chief, when I get a complaint that, you know, nobody's been ticketing anybody on my road, well, I can absolutely prove that not to be the fact now, where before that was an impossible question to answer or a statement to respond to.
They had that question about the town pier parking.
Yeah, you know, believe me, that's actually one of the areas on that report that's confusing, because the guys, there's about 15 different ways they input town parking lot, town pier, 37 Washington. They put it in differently. So we're going to have to figure out how to train everybody to be consistent and how they enter certain things. And one of the conversations I had with the vendor was they may possibly be able to do certain locations. If we have frequent locations, they may be able to do some Dropbox type things, so people can just pick a street or whatever and put it in, click on it rather than having to write it out in the machine. Now the device is one of the things that, and we knew this, you know, the enforcement's actually slower with the device than doing it with the old chalk and paper, because what happens is the officers have to go up. You can scan the license plate, but it makes frequent mistakes. The best thing is the inspection sticker has a barcode. It will read the barcode, and that gives us the information we need. So Massachusetts registered vehicles that all have inspection stickers, we can just go up and scan that barcode. But if they're an out-of-state vehicle, they have to enter all the information manually in the system, and that's what slows them down a lot. So it's going to change the way we do business a little bit and how we do enforcement, but it's going to make it in some ways with the information we get more efficient, hopefully more effective, I should say.
Great. Thanks for the update.
Okay.
Any other business or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Second.
Mr. Arsenault,
Second.
how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Murphy, Mr. Rowland, Mr. Gardner, and chair votes aye. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good job, Steve.
Yeah.